All right, welcome back to another episode of Meet the Creatives. Today I'm joined by Laurence Juber. Laurence, thank you for joining me today.
My pleasure.
It's a real pleasure to talk to you. I know I was really into guitar when I was younger. My dad always played guitar, and I remember that my dad got, I think it was some of your DVDs. He used to play Cobalt Blue. He was bound and determined to
Uh-huh.
play that song. And I have a picture. I sent
Uh-huh.
it to you via email. It was me and my now wife, Sammy. We saw you, I think, here, where was it here? Oh, 2000, June 2011 at Joe's Pub in the East Village. We were right there in the front row.
Uh-huh. Oh
And
yeah, that was a nice show. I liked playing Joe's Pub.
it's
Yeah.
fantastic. We had the best time ever, honestly. So, but yeah, my whole family were all great fans of yours. My dad used to bring down the DVDs and play them for my grandparents, and they all love you. So, it's an honor and
Uh-huh.
privilege. It's a privilege to have you on the show. I talked to a lot of people, but I'm admittedly a little bit nervous for this one. But you seem like you're the man. I
Oh, well,
think
don't be nervous.
we'll be all right.
Yeah,
Okay, that's
we'll
good.
be fine.
All right,
Yeah.
perfect. So you've been playing guitar now for over 50 years. You've worked on a whole bunch of stuff. You've worked with Wings, played alongside Paul McCartney, which is really great. Did you work on Back to the Egg? I love that album.
Yeah. Yeah, I
And
played lead guitar on Back to the Egg.
are you one of the people that's in that picture? Is that is that you
Yeah.
or wow? That's so cool. Oh my god, I
Yeah,
love
I'm
that.
on the right hand side.
Okay,
Yeah.
good. Yeah, that was my guess. I wasn't exactly sure, and I was like, this might be awkward if not, but that's so cool. I love that album.
Yeah. And if you look in the background, you'll see there's a platinum disc hanging
Mhm.
on my wall, and
Wow.
that's the platinum. That's the multi-platinum for Back to the Egg. Yeah.
Wow, that's so cool. It's a fantastic album. And then you've also worked on a whole bunch of studio work. You've worked on Pocahontas, Home Improvement,
Mm.
Good Will Hunting, Dirty Dancing. So that's kind of cool. But for those of you who are new to you, a little bit of background about who you are, where you're from, and what you've been doing in your guitar journey thus far.
Well, I grew up in England. I was born in London, and I started playing guitar on my 11th birthday in November of '63.
Wow.
So the Beatles, it was right, kind of like the first cresting wave of Beatlemania
Right.
in England, and that was really, I mean, I was inspired by the Beatles and by there was an English band called the Shadows
Mhm.
who backed up Cliff Richard, and they did all really cool twangy instrumental guitar stuff, and I just loved that sound, and I loved the sound of the guitar, and I wanted to play it, and my dad wanted me to play the saxophone, and I compromised. I said, okay, I'll learn clarinet in orchestra at school.
Wow.
But as it turned out, I put my name at the bottom of the list, and they ran out of clarinets long before they got to
Bummer.
me. So I got, well, I wasn't a bummer really, because I
No,
got
no,
a
yeah, yeah. I'm
guitar,
being sarcastic, sorry.
and it really, that I never put it down. And I mean, I've now been playing for 56 years, something like
Well,
that.
you look
And
great. I
I'm
would
still
never
learning.
guess that.
Thank you. I'm still learning.
Yeah.
Um, so I very quickly learned there was a local band leader who started taking me out on um, kind of just gigs like weddings and stuff like that
Right.
when I was 13, and I learned that a great way to make a living as a musician was to be a studio musician, and because I was not only a fan of guitar but also a fan of records, pop records and rock records.
Right.
Um, and I would listen to the records and pick out the guitar parts but also listen to the bass and drums and how it was all put together. And I decided I wanted to be a studio musician. So that kind of became my brass ring.
Right.
And I studied classical guitar in high school, not because I necessarily wanted to learn classical guitar, but because I wanted to study music. And I needed a certain grade level to be able to study music the way that I wanted to.
Right.
So I then went to college, studied music at London University. And while I was doing that, I was playing in the National Youth Jazz Orchestra,
Wow.
which was kind of like a farm team. It was a big band, and it was a farm team for studio players. And we did a TV concert, and the next day I got a call from a contractor. In England, we call them fixers,
Right.
who would book musicians for studio work. And of course, this is mid 70s. There's no computers. There's no the very few synthesizers.
You can just reach out on a DM like I did. Yeah.
Yeah,
Exactly.
I mean, it was really, if you wanted to make any music, you needed a band,
Right.
So I started doing sessions at the BBC. I was doing jingle sessions. I was playing on records, TV shows. Not much in the way of movie stuff, but and along the way, I got to play. I played with the Alan Parsons Project on Tales of Mystery and Imagination, first album. I had no idea what it was. I mean, I didn't even know until I read it in a magazine 25 years later that I played on this record.
That's so cool.
But that's what studio work could be like. I mean, that was a session at Abbey Road on a Tuesday night with an orchestra and some mandolins and a harpsichord and an acoustic guitar, and it was, an instrumental track. And at Abbey Road in Studio 2, you didn't go up into the control room unless you were invited. The musicians stayed down in the studio. And so I never knew what that session was for until many years later. But then now going back 1978, right around this time, I think it was April 21st of 1978, I was at Abbey Road doing a session in Studio 2, and there was a phone call for me, which was very unusual to get a phone call. Of course, no cell phones in those days. I mean, it was...
If you got a phone call, it was a big deal back then, yeah.
Yeah, you had to like pick the handset up off. Yeah.
That's funny.
And it was Paul McCartney's office asking me if I was free to go and jam with Denny on Monday, and oh, by the way, Paul and Linda will be there.
Wow.
And I knew that they were looking for a guitar player, but it wasn't really entirely on my radar to go after a gig like that because I was very well established as a studio player.
Right.
But nonetheless, I said yes, even though I didn't know any Wings tunes. In fact, over the weekend, I borrowed some LPs from my brother, but it didn't really do me a lot of good. Yeah. And then when I did the audition, it was me and Steve Holly, the drummer, auditioned at the same time. And we played some Chuck Berry tunes and some reggae grooves.
Wow.
See, I had worked with Denny Lane on a TV show with David Essex the previous September, where I was playing lead guitar in the house band. And we did Go Now, which was the old Moody Blues hit that Denny, was his feature.
Yeah.
And I played a guitar solo on it, and he liked what I did and recommended me for the gig.
Wow.
And so, we did this audition, and then Paul turns around and said, well, what are you doing for the next few years? And, and I, at that point, it was like, I had to really make a decision, and there was this nanosecond was, okay, I've spent all my teenage years in, all my career up until now establishing myself as a first call studio musician.
Right.
And there's Paul McCartney, and I wasn't going to say no to the Beatles.
Yeah, so, to that one you got to say yes. There's not a lot of things.
So I walked away from studio work to join Wings. And my most recent credit in that scene was I played on the soundtrack of The Spy Who Loved Me,
right.
which was a big movie, and that was kind of helping. I thought that was going to help me get into playing on movie scores too, which was always. That was a tough one to break into because you have to be a really kind of demon sight reader to do that stuff. Right. And it wasn't really until I got to LA some years later that I got that entree. Yeah. But I was in Wings for 3 years. Basically, it was April of 78 through April of 81. And we did the Back to the Egg album. We had some hit singles with Coming Up and Good Night Tonight. Mm-hmm. I worked with Ringo and Paul during that period. Did part of an album with Ringo that Paul was producing, and was starting to write music for myself. I scored a commercial, and started to realize that there was money to be made, not just playing guitar, but also being, a writer. And that was something I really learned from Paul in terms of. Because he's a very successful music publisher, not just of his own music, but of some substantial catalogs. It was kind of an education for me. I really feel like I got my master's degree from McCartney University, not just on the playing point of view, but also in terms of the business end of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I moved to New York. When I saw that Wings was breaking up, I moved to New York. I had some projects to work on there. I'd been there just a few months when I met Hope, who later became my wife, and she was from LA. And after spending the summer having this kind of bi-coastal relationship, I ended up moving out to LA in October of '81, and I've never left. Well, except to be on the road, but
yeah, exactly.
In terms of where I live, living here, and it took me a little while to get into the studio work here, but I started getting calls, and then that became kind of the next phase of my career, was to be an LA studio musician, and I played on hundreds of TV shows, most notably Home Improvement, Roseanne, Seventh Heaven, all of those running shows. And a whole bunch of movies like Goodwill. You mentioned Goodwill Hunting, Pocahontas.
I love Pocahontas.
I played on Colors of the Wind and Just Around the River Bend.
Yeah, those are two of my favorite songs, actually. I weirdly enough, I'm like obsessed with Pocahontas and recently rewatched it, and those are fantastic songs.
Playing on that song, I mean, that was one session at CBS Studio, actually Todd Ayo, which was one of the scoring stages, with a large orchestra, and I remember 3 harps and 8 double basses and a choir and 1 acoustic guitar. And that is not atypical of those kind of movie sessions, but the TV stuff typically would be a much smaller group. And fairly early on, because Hope's dad was a TV producer, right. And so he got me involved in scoring some of his shows. So that led me into also writing music for TV. So I did, for example, the Brady Bunch, A Very Brady Christmas. I did the score for that. Awesome. Did some movies in the 80s, did some TV series. But really, by the time I got into the mid-90s, my main focus had become doing solo acoustic guitar stuff.
Yeah, definitely.
And that really, it started with a friend of mine offering me a record deal in 1990. And now I think I'm up to my 30th album, but I lost
awesome.
count. Depending on if you include some duo records, and
right.
I've done 4 albums with Al Stewart where I produced, and one of which, the first one, Between the Wars, it was Al Stewart with Laurence Juber, so it was, that was virtually a duo album.
Yeah, you're definitely prolific in that way, and having a kind of a high output. One of the things that I like to tackle on this show is, it's for people just starting out. I love the notion that somebody has just picked up a guitar, they just started their journey, they're at the outset of that journey, and they look at you and they might think to themselves, I'll never be that good, or I'll never be able to get to that place. I think of my dad trying to learn Cobalt Blue, and I remember I could do like the bass line, but that was about it. And I know that it takes a long time to get to that place. But if you can give any advice to someone who's just starting out on their journey.
The fact is that you can find 3-year-old Chinese kids who playing, fiendish classical guitar.
Yeah.
The mechanics are really a question of muscle memory, and that just is practice. Mm-hmm. But there's also the understanding, is to understand what it is that you're playing. And that's really what allowed me to have the career that I've had, is that I'm not a guitar player, I'm a musician who plays guitar.
Right.
So much in the same way as when you learn some music theory, when you learn the piano, learning guitar, it's also helpful to understand what it is that you're doing. Because you can get by, if you just learn a bunch of chord shapes.
Yeah.
People have been getting by with that.
That's me, just the farmer
chords. You can
literally
go back to the 17th century to find books that have diagrams of chord shapes.
Yeah. That's crazy.
There's nothing new about that. But to go beyond that, to go to the point of playing a tune like Cobalt Blue, which has a moving bass line and a melody at the same time, and means hammering on, and a lot of more advanced technical stuff, that really requires just a lot of practice and a lot of understanding. And with YouTube now, you can imitate very easily. You've got, videos of people doing things. Somebody can find performances of me on YouTube,
right,
or on Vimeo, or wherever I have that stuff.
Yeah.
Playing tunes. And you can see what I do. I mean, I've published, there's videos, there's instructional stuff. But for me, the real focus has been, from my perspective, is understanding what the guitar is as a musical instrument. And because of the fact that I have, some classical music background too, from having a degree in music, that I've really looked to combine a sense of music history with the guitar, what I call guitarology.
Yeah.
Where you can go back. I put out a book last year, The Evolution of Fingerstyle Guitar, which is all pieces going back to like 1507 of
That's so awesome.
Music from the lute, the vihuela, the Renaissance guitar, Baroque guitar. And, the guitar didn't become a six-string instrument like we recognize it until the 1770s.
Wow.
So, six-string guitar is about as old as America is, as a nation.
Kind of ironic, yeah.
And especially because really the acoustic guitar is kind of the American national instrument, if you think about it.
You think about Stratocasters, Telecasters.
Yeah, I play a Martin guitar. Martin have been in business since 1833.
Wow. And you had your own custom Martin guitar as well.
There was an upstart with the Telecaster, or the Broadcaster as it was in 1949. I mean, C.F. Martin's company had been making guitars for well over 100 years.
Yeah.
Orville Gibson, there's another name. Orville Gibson only owned the guitar company for about 8 years, and then he sold it. But his name has always been on the guitars.
Oh, that's crazy.
But those names, Gibson, Martin, Fender. I mean, those are highly recognizable American brands. Not to mention Gretsch and Guild and Epiphone and
Exactly.
I mean, they've changed a lot over the years, but C.F. Martin and Company is the same company it was in 1833. It's still owned by the same family, and it's has an enormous archive and is a great kind of repository of American music history. I have one of theirs from 1893.
Oh, I got to see this. Wow, that's so awesome. From 1893, that's so
1893.
It sounds good too.
Oh, it's a great guitar.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, it's small and it weighs nothing. It's like a potato chip.
Yeah.
But they, though that's the thing, is that the guitar is so kind of built into the cultural life of America. But interestingly enough, what we don't recognize very well today is that the Hawaiian guitar was incredibly popular in America in the early 20th century. That when
like the ukulele, is that the same thing? The ukulele?
No, not the lap slide.
Oh, okay, yeah. Oh, I got it.
That was incredibly influential in all kinds of ways. Influential on early jazz, on early blues.
Yeah.
The Hawaiian musicians traveled the world, and in all kinds of key places. There were Hawaiian guitar players who were lauded as being guitar heroes.
Yeah, definitely.
But we don't have an awareness of that, because we think of it as kind of being something. Hawaiian guitar is such a strong flavor, and you kind of associate being on the beach in Waikiki, or
like Blue Hawaii from Elvis or something like that. Yeah,
right,
sure.
exactly.
Well, I've kind of gone down like that wormhole because I kind of got into that sound, sort of like the generic pop version of the Hawaiian sound, and then nowadays with products like Spotify, you can kind of just go down the wormhole and see where things originated from, and Hawaiian music really is kind of fantastic. So that's awesome.
Oh yeah.
Can we talk about your for all the guitar nerds out there? I've always dreamed about having a Martin guitar. I have a Yamaha right now. It's a pretty good guitar for good bang for the buck, I guess. But I've always wanted to have kind of a Martin guitar, and I know that you have a signature model. Oh, I think he's going to get it.
Yeah, I did.
There you go. Perfect. So tell me about this guitar. It's your own custom guitar.
Yeah, it's well, this is a custom shop version of it.
Right.
Hang on, let me just adjust my picture here. So there we go. This is a custom shop version, because it used to be a production model, but we're done with those at this point.
Right.
So, what I try and do is when the Martin Custom Shop add any new capabilities to what they can do, that way I'll order a new one that just is kind of the state of the art. And this one is, actually, this is not, I didn't pick up the one I thought I was picking up. That's okay. The other one's in its case. But this is almost the latest incarnation. So this is an orchestra model.
Right.
It's an OM, so it's a longer scale, a little bit less, a tenth of an inch less than a Fender or a Fender scale, but longer than a Gibson scale.
Wow.
The triple art model is the one that has the shorter scale.
Right.
Because I use drop tunings, like right now I'm in DAGAD.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let me turn this mic on.
Feel free to play, man. This is awesome. My dad's gonna love this. The family is going to be beside themselves when they see this video. I'm trying to outrun the sun over here while you're making this beautiful music. Go ahead.
Yeah. So this one has a high alpine Swiss spruce top with this is Honduran mahogany.
Wow.
And I'm in DAGAD tuning. And it's strung with my signature retro strings too.
And those are thicker, correct?
What's that?
And those are a thicker gauge string, correct?
Well, I use a heavy string, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like a 13 through a 56.
Right.
But my third, fourth, and fifth strings are light gauge. The rest are medium.
There you go. See, I have that part, bum, 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 and then that's it.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
I'm just tuning up here.
No worries.
Let me just plug it in too.
Yeah, no worries. Take your time. Right. love it. That is so
Thanks.
cool. Dad, that one's for you. That's so cool. It's funny, as you were playing that, I was laughing because I was thinking to myself, there's that little move, and you were talking before about how much of it's like intuition, how much is like what you're born with. I've always been kind of percussive, but can't necessarily do like the hard chords. I probably could with more discipline, hard work, or whatever. But that move that you do where you like slap the top of the guitar and kind of use it as a drum. I remember that thing. When I met my wife, I used to do that when I would play guitar, and she would be like so impressed by it. Now she would probably roll her eyes, but because now she knows where I'm getting it from. That's cool. That's really cool. Let's talk about this new thing you're doing, Tea Time with LJ. That's what your fans call you. My family, we love it. The reason I originally reached out because my mom sent a screenshot. My dad was like commenting on there, and she's like, Dad's loving this Tea Time thing with Laurence Juber, and I was like, you know what? I've never asked, and I'm just gonna ask, and I'm gonna see what happens. And you were kind enough and generous enough to get back to me. So let's talk about Tea Time.
My pleasure.
What is that? How did you come up with this idea? Was this something that happened because of COVID-19? Was it after that, or?
No, it was because of that. I mean, it's because everybody was shut in.
Right.
And I was talking about doing it. I was talking with my daughter, Nico, and she says, oh, you should do Tea Time. And in fact, years and years ago, a long time ago, when Nico was a baby, there was a little local club, the Blah Blah Cafe here in Studio City, where on a Sunday afternoon we do like a tea time gig, and I wanted to do something that was at kind of a convenient time, for the East Coast, because it's really tea time on the East Coast, right. And the different time zones. I mean, it's really after lunch. But after lunch with LJ just doesn't sound quite the same.
Right.
But it's really kind of a focus for me to be able to know that I have a daily gig,
right.
Except for Sundays.
But keep your sanity kind of thing. Yeah.
What's that?
Like keep your sanity kind of thing. Keep yourself preoccupied.
Yeah, I want to keep me focused and, pulling out old repertoire that I haven't played in years.
Yeah.
So not only am I doing the show itself, but there's a lot of preparation involved. So it's kind of keeping me focused on playing, because some of my other projects are on hold right now.
Right.
Like, for example, Hope and I have written, with her brother Lloyd, we've written a very Brady musical, the Brady Bunch musical, which we were intending to start a tour this fall.
Wow.
But that's on hold, obviously, because none of the theaters are open.
Right. I love the Brady Bunch. I'm a very old soul. I love the Brady Bunch. I love all, old things.
Well, you'll like this musical. It's irreverent, but true to Brady.
Cool.
And so, we've been doing a little bit of work on that. But I've been playing a lot of local gigs, which aren't happening now. A friend of mine, T-Bear, has a band called Route 66 with a horn section from the Conan show, and Denny Sywell from Wings on drums.
Right. And
really like a killer 11-piece band, and we've been playing some local clubs. And that's been great for me because I've been playing more electric guitar.
Yeah.
Plus, I had a boatload of touring that was all canceled, including I was supposed to go to Taiwan at the beginning of March.
Oh, wow.
That got pushed to the end of June. I don't think that's going to happen either.
Yeah.
But just a lot of stuff has been pushed back later in the year, and I just have my latest album, The Fab Fourth, came out at the end of March. And not being able to go to the East Coast to promote that, which is, what I was intending to do, it was all like, well, why don't I just put my gigging activities on Facebook?
Yeah.
I mean, you can put stuff up on YouTube, but Facebook really is where the audience is.
Exactly.
And I've done some things. I mean, I did my version of A Day in the Life the other day.
I saw that. That was awesome.
But that's had like 27,000 views.
Right.
My daily shows, I mean, the live audience is 400-500, but I mean, it's up to like 2,500, when people watch it later.
Yeah, the scale of the internet is insane. It's so crazy.
Yeah, and when I've done all Beatles shows or all Wing shows, then the numbers go way up on that. but so it's given me an opportunity to promote the new album. But I'm not going to play tunes. I'm not going to play a Beatle tune every day.
Yeah.
Just most days. I've done 4 albums of Beatles, so I have a lot of Beatle repertoire under my fingers. And yesterday I did a clinic for TrueFire.com, who I have an educational module with them, and we're going to be setting up a channel for me to do some online teaching. And I'm doing some Skype lessons and all that. But it's amazing how much of the day revolves around me playing guitar at this point, and pulling out guitars that I haven't played in a while and restringing them. And, it's just a different kind of focus. And until I can, until things open up, I even when things open up, I'm not sure how much more traveling I'm going to be doing.
Right. It'd be a gradual kind of thing,
Yeah, so we'll see how that all works. But so being able to perform online, it's kind of a pro bono thing, because it's not like I'm doing it for money. I'm doing it, to keep people entertained and to do what I can to kind of help spread some love and good feelings and help people de-stress.
You definitely are doing that. I love it. There's nothing more I love than, and I know it's a little bit early on my time, but every once in a while with this weird quarantine schedule, I'll pour myself a nice drink and I'll watch your thing, and I love it. I feel like I'm like in the room, and you've done a great job with the production quality of it and everything. So.
Well, I try and make the audio sound good, and I'm just using the mic in my computer, the camera in my computer.
Right.
But I use a program called Ecamm as a virtual camera, so it gives me a better picture than what comes straight out of Skype or.
Right. I think I'm using
Facebook
Ecamm right now, actually,
Pro.
which is kind of cool. So it's good to know. I've always been curious. How much do you practice? I would imagine like you practice a lot, given the style of music that you're playing. Like roughly, I know it's always kind of different, but how many hours are you putting on practicing?
It's really hard. I'm probably putting in now right around 2 to 3 hours a day.
Right. That's a lot.
It's a lot, but there's been times in my life where I've done a lot more than that.
Right.
But around 2-3 hours a day, because I'm not traveling. When I'm traveling, that makes it a lot harder to have guitar in my hands. And sometimes, the only time I get to play, if I'm on the road, is for sound check and for the gig.
Yeah, and that's it.
And that's it. But if there's a 90-minute show and 10-minute sound check, it's not, and it's all focused on performance repertoire as opposed to me being able to say, okay, what am I going to play on Friday?
Yeah. And
then pulling out something out of my repertoire and saying, okay, how much of this do I actually remember, considering I recorded it 15 years ago? It's like I've written over 150 tunes for guitar, and I look at a title and I think, how does that go?
So when people yell it out, sometimes you're like, I don't know, maybe another time. That's so cool. Thank you so much for doing this. It's been a pleasure and a privilege. Where can people find you online? Where can people find your new album? How do people get involved with all things LJ?
Well, if you go to my website, which is LaurenceJuber.com, and it's LaurenceJuber, but if you spell it with a W, it's okay.
I might have done that maybe once or twice, but I think by now I have it down.
There is an online store, so you can buy CDs from there, and if they come from my store, then I sign them. Wow. If they come from Amazon, it just goes through regular distribution.
Right.
I have a mailing list. There's an email list you can sign up for. There's a lot of information about me on the various pages on the website. I don't really pay that much attention to my YouTube channel. I should more. And what I'm going to do is take some of the best performances from Tea Time and put those up on YouTube.
That'd be awesome.
And then, but of course that requires time. I've got to go in and watch them and edit and all that.
I've got nothing but time in my hands if you need help.
I am archiving all that stuff.
Right, that's cool.
But I appreciate any help that I can get with this stuff. And then, of course, you can find me on Spotify. You can find me on Pandora.
Nice.
For some weird reason on Pandora, most of my play is my Christmas music.
Right.
But I think it's just because it was there early and it just kind of got onto
Just sounds
playlists.
so damn good. Yeah.
Well, thanks. But Spotify, my whole catalog is there. And then, there are also ways you can buy high resolution versions of some of these albums too. So it's out there.
Okay.
The material's out there. Some of it's out of print in CDs. And my Altered Reality album is long gone as a CD, but it's available. You can download it. Apple Music is another one.
For sure. I don't think that I'm ever going to get Cobalt Blue out of my head after this, but that's not the worst song I have stuck in my head. So Laurence, thank you so much. I understand at this point in this podcast, I understand people put their pants on one leg at a time, but you've been a huge inspiration to me, to my family. You're doing a great thing with your Tea Time series and everything else that you've done. And if you see Paul McCartney, tell him I said hello, and he has an open invite on Meet the Creatives anytime. You want to play us out with one? Can we get one more?
Yeah, you can see my fingers are starting to glow because the sun's starting to hit them. So.
Oh my God. You can play one more. Yeah. Back in the USSR. I do know how lucky I am, though. That's good. Thank you, Laurence. It's been a pleasure.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you very much.
All right, brother. Thank you so
much.
All
right, then.
It's been great.
My
Cheers.
pleasure.
Bye.
Cheers.